Jon Stewart really cast himself in the mold of John Oliver and being willing to stand up to his corporate daddy. In this case, Paramount, who is in some ways, I guess, his employer. And they recently were in the news for bowing down to the Trump administration in the way that has become very typical, settling for millions of dollars to Donald Trump for an absolute BS frivolous lawsuit. And thereby causing a lot of people to question whether they're still gonna be able to be trusted to do quality journalism, or whether they're now just there in service to Donald Trump, terrified of turning against him in a way that might hurt their business interests. And Jon addressed this on The Daily Show last night. I want to just tell you a little bit of what he got into. It's a great segment, a great interview that you should definitely watch. But he called the settlement shameful, and then did a little joke about Arbys for when you want a sandwich commensurate with your company's shame. He doubled down on that, referencing it being a shameful act, and then brought on former 60 Minutes correspondent Steve Kroft as his guest to discuss the topic. Now, of course, 60 Minutes is at sort of the heart of this with the CBS News thing. And so he introduces Kroft. He called the settlement unusual. Kroft called it, or said that several Congress people have referred to it as bribery, which I think is a very fair way to portray it. Kroft agreed that the move was devastating to the journalists there at 60 Minutes and said there was a lot of fear over there about losing their jobs, what's happening to the country, and losing the First Amendment. And so there's definitely concern about that, about the intimidation of media outlets, shaking them down for money, and making them fear running accurate stories in the future that could get pressure from the administration. But that is importantly not the only concern when it comes to this. There are broader business concerns too, which they got into in their talk. Stewart said, "Is this purely Paramount buying their way? They're being sold right now to a gentleman who is friends with the president, Larry Ellison, and his son David Ellison at Skydance. Was this settlement just a payment so that this merger can go through and not be challenged by Trump's FCC?" To which Kroft said, "Yes, it's a little complicated. There's Sherry Redstone, who is the head of Paramount. She wants to sell it, so she wanted the sale to go through, but Donald Trump thought, I'm gonna settle the score here." He said very often about, "I'm gonna go after my enemies." He was upset with 60 Minutes, and he decided that he was going to sue. And so either one of those would be really concerning. I mean, this is not stuff that's supposed to happen in America. It happens in other petty dictatorships during the fall of popular democracy. They always want to take down the media. And it's not even like Paramount is the first company to comply in this way. We've had multiple instances of that. That's what makes this so scary. But we're not even done with them bowing down. Trump earlier claimed that the settlement, which was $16 million, is actually worth more because now CBS is gonna run ads for him. He said, "We did a deal for about 16 million plus 16 million, or maybe more than that in advertising. So it's a combination of 16 plus 16 plus. So it's like 32 million to maybe 35 million. Now that is not anything that's in whatever deal they signed, but that doesn't mean that they're not gonna do it. Like Trump could very well be lying, or he could be talking about something that has not yet been discussed with the company, but why wouldn't he go for more? It's not like when the mob would shake down a business, now you're good. You paid me once, that's it. Now you don't have to worry. Now they know you will comply. They know you will bow down. That's why they're going from company to company, and they can definitely return to the prior ones for more money or for more advertising. The way they've done with these law offices in offering pro bono work to basically work for the administration to pursue their twisted and corrupt goals. And so many of those law offices have already surrendered. We have the same exact thing happening with these companies. And I'm very glad that Jon Stewart is willing to discuss that, knowing that it could be that, if they do this deal with Trump because they're worried that the FCC at Trump's direction is gonna block the sale of this company, then if the 60 Minutes thing, which was basically nothing, is enough to potentially imperil that deal, Jon Stewart doing an entire episode about it could very well be on that same level. Maybe Donald Trump starts to complain about that. And so Jon Stewart is potentially, I don't think there's a big chance, he's a very popular draw for the company, but he could be imperiling his job or the Daily Show itself. And he's been focusing on this even before the Paramount deal. I think there needs to be way more conversation about this. One of the most subversive things about all of this is that when these companies make the internal decision that we're not gonna do critical coverage of the administration, it's not like you're gonna know going forward. It's all in the darkness. Stories that could have been run will not be run. They will not be pursued. Sources will not be used. That's the fear that, as the Washington Post, which now is actively complying as well, said, that democracy dies in darkness and Trump is casting a shadow over more and more of the media every day. And so I'm glad that the Daily Show is talking about it. I know John Oliver is too, but it needs to be a much bigger part of this conversation. And Apollo Racer says if Jon Stewart loses his job there, you should bring him on TYT. See, that isn't possible. We need the Jon Stewart out there on the Daily Show, and we need a whole lot more. We need 60 Minutes. We need critical interviews of candidates, and we need them not to be so terrified of this fascist that journalism effectively, willingly chokes itself to death.